What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7 underscore D. Now, here's a book called Who Were the Minoans? An African Answer by G.J. Campbell Dunn. I want to pick up on certain things, alright? And I'm going to start off right here. And this is dealing with the first chapter of this book. Okay. Early scholars such as Sir Arthur Evans drew a connection between prehistoric Crete and Africa. Evans's book, The Palace of Minos at Kronos, for example, provides an ample evidence of Egyptian influence in the early period. Evans himself thought that the Minoans perhaps came from Libya. The tombs of Messara appear to support this conclusion. Considerable evidence links Minoan Crete and its colony of Anthera with the African continent. Monkeys and cats painted on walls of Kronos, for example, are African. African antelopes and date palms appear on the wall paintings from Thera, not to mention what the Maranitos saw as a Negro head. The famous Cretan bull sport have African antecedents. African ostrich eggs, too, have been found in Crete, not to mention ivory objects made from elephant's tusk, previous vessels of bronze, gold, and silver. All these products come from Africa. Metalworking. Remember I told you the brothers who smelted iron? Metalworking was known in Africa and the Americas from a very early date. Bronze mirrors, such as those found in Crete, were used in Nubia and Egypt. Filigree and granulation, subtle methods of miniature gold work, were known in Nigeria, as was metal inlay, called lamu, in East Africa. The unusual double pipes, a musical instrument, were played in Egypt, but also by the Dinka of the southern Sudan. The Kamares pottery resembles that of Kerma, who lived near Monroe. The palanquin and the parasol used in Crete are also known to be African. Curiously, the Minoan men in the wall paintings of Crete and Thera are red, but the women are white. The white flesh of these women recalls the African practice of whitening the skin of women at initiation ceremonies before marriage. The men wore cod pieces, little pieces around their penis, a distinctly African garment. Men also wore feathered headdresses, like the Nubia of East Africa, just like the Negroes here in America. All right, the labyrinth palaces of Minoan Crete can be explained in terms of African architecture. They have features in common with Yoruba palace buildings, organization around a courtyard used as a marketplace, and smaller rain courts of impluva. For example, the materials rubble and mud brick are also African. The affinities are not with Indo-European or Near Eastern architecture, which favors a symmetrical plan and a rectangular containing wall. Finally, the enigmatic Minoan linear scripts point to Africa. Their signs we call the Bambara and Dogon signs in form and number, and have a connection with the Meroitic cursive and with the vowel syllabic script of West Africa. In fact, most of the linear signs have formal and cinematic equivalents in Egyptian hieroglyphs, but they are not intended to write ancient Egyptian. The actual language recorded by the signs has nothing in common with Egyptian. In fact, the signs, with their phonetics open monosyllabics, can be explained as pictures of things, together with their names. In the Western Niger-Congo language of Kiwa group, the polysyllabic words on the tablets, however, are in many cases very close to words of Yoruba, Kwa, now Benue Congo, and Fula, a Niger-Congo language of the Atlantic group. Both the Kiwa and the Atlantic are connected with Benue Congo, which includes Bantu. Some scholars had already recognized that Linear A wrote in argumentative language. The Niger-Congo languages are argumentative and distinguished by the elaborate system of prefixes. Skip on down. The Minoans seem to be related both to the Fulani, whom they physically resemble red skin, and to Yoruba, whose palaces architecture they imitated. Their language fits within the Atlantic Kouwa-Benue-Congo complex. The Cretan place name Gorwin includes the Fulo word Gora or Gorel, man, male, seen also in gorilla, originally used by Hanno, in his Periplus of African hairy women. Other Cretan place names such as Gazai compared Gazai in Nigeria, Ida compared Ada in Nigeria, Minoa compared Minna in Nigeria, Minona, the African fertility goddess, Mila compared Mali, Kanda compared Kenda in Benin, Como compared Como River on Ivory Coast, Kumasa compared Kumasa in Ghana, had parallels in Nigeria and the vicinity. We think the Minoans came from northern Nigeria, all right, or from Niger, once well watered or thereabout. Civilization, here now I want you to pick up in this part. Civilization in the Sahara is far older than in Egypt. The Sahara airidified about 3,000 to 2,500 BC, forcing Saharan populations to move. I mentioned that over and over again. The migration to Crete was part of this movement. Minoan civilization began on Crete about 3,000 BC and intensifies from 2000 BC on, when ships became available. The chariot routes took them to the coast for the donkey and later camel itineraries. The Minoans, it seems, are the predecessors of the biblical Philistines, associated with writing an early alphabet, and of seafaring Phoenicians who worshiped the goddess Tanit. Being red-skinned, they are ultimately of Eastern origin, but spoke an African language and adopted African customs. The Minoans are a missing link, so to speak, that clarifies a number of important problems concerned with the Aegean Bronze Age and the origins of European civilization. The ancient Greeks called them the Pelasgians and associated them with primitive religious practices and regarded their language as barbarous. In classical times, the Pelasgians survived only in remote areas. The Pelasgiratis, Lemnos, and part of Crete, as a marginalized aboriginal minority. Now, I mentioned before, a lot of our people had a reddish hue, and that was basically a certain color, a brown color, but it had a reddish burnt hue, actually reflecting towards the sun. So they weren't a red race; they had like a reddish brownish hue. And some of our people did have that. The feather in the head, you seen black people in Africa wear that. You seen black people in America wear that feather in the head. We had feathers on the head. And the Minoan goddess, what you call the snake goddess, you had the serpent kings here. You also had the serpent mounds, the serpent crown. But you also had the Minoan goddess over in Canada. That was an image of a woman being carved out in natural rock, along with Olmec men-style football helmet heads. That was in Alberta, Canada. So those images of the serpent was here in America, it was over in Africa, it was throughout the world. And I want brothers and sisters to understand that the fact is that so-called black people weren't just in one region. He also mentioned the airification of the Sahara Desert. I've said that over and over again, how those mega lakes that were over in Africa dried up, and then some of them people migrated out, all right? And even some came to lands where black folks were already there. So you had another crop of people coming over from Africa as the area dried out. Some of them went to Europe, and some of them came over to the Americas, because that area where it was having their fishing and all their livestock in that area, once that water dried up and it's no more, they can no longer fish and do their maritime trading in that area. They had to move out to other regions where large bodies of water was out, so they sailed the seas. So if they didn't do deep sea travel outside of so-called Africa, they had to do it due to the fact in order to survive. You get what I'm saying? So it was always constant travel and movement with black people globally. They weren't just situated and fixated in one area. So when you hear people say that you descendant of West African slaves, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I keep saying this, man, over and over again. Them clowns don't know what the hell they're talking about, but they keep pushing that lie. They keep pushing that lie, and that lie continues to be sticking. Because when you constantly just tell a lie, you just want it to stick out there. Just stick. And then you're telling so many times, people end up believing it. Now, here's something about the bull sport. All right? It's in the same book. A matter which has attracted much attention is the Minoan love of bull sports. Those were not confined to Crete, but took place also in Greece and Mycenae, at Tyrannus, and in Thessaly, palaces known as Minoan occupation. They also featured the Roman Etruscans arena. The Etruscans, we now know, were African. They also featured in the Roman Etruscan arena. The Etruscans, we now know, were African. Now, I'm going to stop right there. If the Etruscans were straight up black, and they were straight up black, the Romans were black, dude. Some of them took in these white wives, but the Etruscans were straight up black. Egyptians. The Romans were originally black. All right, I'm going to go. I'm going to keep going. From Crete, we have wall painting. You probably started to have some mulattoes up in society, but they weren't white people. All right, so when you start using common sense, you knew the Romans weren't white. But, okay, from Crete, we have wall paintings. Statuettes, seals, which show men and women vaulting over the horns of charging bull to the arms of a catcher waiting behind. Often the jumper falls or is gored by the bull. Other seals show bull heads together with a double axe, a sacrificial implement. Raita, ritual vases, are often made in the form of a bull's head. For magical substances keep in these vessels in Africa. We may reasonably infer that, as in Spain today, the bull was slain at the end of the ceremony. Probably the raita were used to pour the blood, and baptism of blood, or the tarabolum, was involved. As in the Mithras cult, in this Iranian cult, a sword is driven into the neck of the bull. The slayer hopes in this way to attain the bull's legendary potency. A bull can impregnate 50 cows in one night. Even today, a bull is given by the nomadic Fulani boy's father to the girl's father to mark a betrothal. This bull is killed and eaten by the in-laws. If one looks further afield for evidence, it is possible to cite the Gurkha practice of slaying the bull with a knife, or the Kukra. This rite is surely very old and probably of African origin. Like the knife used, the Cretians who jumped over the bull are depicted as carrying knives, which must have served a purpose. Indeed, a seal shows a Minoan plunging his dagger into the bull's neck. The Gurkhas, like various Indian tribesmen, tether the bull before dispatching it with the knife. To kill with one blow is regarded as ideal. The bull will then have been decapitated with an axe. The double axes shown above, columns in the Hagia Trivida sarcophagus, no doubt had this purpose. They were not in secular use. Spanish practice, in which the matador uses a rapier, is known to be recent. In Spain, it was originally the picador who killed the bull with a knife, but Spain preserved the tradition of bullfighting as proof of manhood. The red cloak, bulls are colorblind, signifies blood. In Crete, we interpret the bull sport as a fertility ritual to prove readiness for marriage, hence the crowds of avid female spectators watching the dangerous spectacle. Among the Oma of Ethiopian bull jumping continues to this day. It is preceded by a ceremony involving slipping a wooden phallus called the boku through 8 iron bracelets. Bullfighting occurs also at Pemba, meaning horns or tusk, in Mozambique. Bull sport and fertility are also linked in Africa. They are part of male initiation, in which the women are submitted to ordeal of circumcision. Women, too, are circumcised by exercising the clitoris before marriage. The presence of female performers in Cretan bull sport is evidenced by the artwork. They wear male garb, including the codpiece, but a different hairstyle, and are painted white, as one might expect. This again has African overtones. Female acrobats performing dangerous tricks with the aid of an assistant spirit appear among the acrobats at Dan Snake Society in Nair Dipel. The inventions of spirits is omnipresent in Africa. They even intervene in games of football to change the course of play. The Vifilo cups found in Greece, but made in the Minoan style, show bulls being caught in a net and bulls being roped around the leg. A decoy cow is decapitated. Compare de Saint Crooks remarks about tying up the master bull to prevent over-serving the cows. Hobbying cattle 2 by 2 at night is also practiced by the Fulani. A hobble is included in the Lunar Age signs. Evans tells us that the Egyptians exposed men from conquered tribes to wild bulls, as can be seen from a pre-dynastic slate palette. The captives were apparently Negroized Libyans, he says, referring to their codpiece, regarding them as half-Semiticized African race, which would accord with our view that they were Fulani. More recently, a painting of bull jumping has been found in the gardens of Palace of Evers in Egypt, the former capital of the Hyksos, the Shepherd Kings. The probable date is beginning of the 18th dynasty. Malik thinks they were made by Minoan artists working in Egypt. This find raises a number of questions. The Hyksos present on Crete have been suggested by some. Besides bull jumping, some artworks show men wrestling with a bull and applying a type of headlock. American cowboys have been known to do the same. Besides bull jumping, some artworks show men wrestling with a bull and applying a type of headlock. American cowboys have been known to do the same. The original cowboys were black, all right? The original cowboys are black, so they just continue to doing something that black folks are doing in other places, all right? This stuff did not originate from white folks. In order to throw a steer, here the test is of strength, not agility. The athlete wrestles with death, literally, in order to prove his manhood. It would be a mistake to regard these performers as captives or even as gladiators. It is clear from their elaborate attire and noble appearances that as Evans 1921 declares, they are the flower of the Minoan race, executing in many cases under direct religious sanction feats of bravery and skill which the whole population took a passionate delight. We may wonder at the exact meaning of these ancient ceremonies, and understanding of their full significance eludes us. But the connection for fertility, death, and the spirit world is beyond doubt. Sexuality involves the transmission of new life, the passing of the soul or spirit. Death also involves the passing of the spirit that passed out of the dying passed on into a newborn child, a plant or an animal. That was regarded as obvious. Bloody games arise from this ancient tradition, continue to be held at funerals into the Roman and Etruscan times. The Etruscans were Negroes. Sometimes they even involve human sacrifice. A life for a life. The Spanish Plaza de Toros is a modern perpetuation of these rites, much modified and attenuated. From a meaningful sacred act, it has been reduced to a display of machoism for entertainment. The typical piece for holding Spanish bullfights is an arena, modeled on the Roman amphitheater. Where the Cretan bull sport took place, we do not know for certain. The main court of the palaces has been suggested. It will be the right size, 50 by 25 yards, and the surrounding veranda could have been cordoned off to protect the spectators. Some may have observed the spectacle from the upper balconies of the palace, as fragments of wall paintings showing female spectators suggest. But the Western art is also a possibility. Damage to the palace would be less likely if the bull sport was held outside the palace complex. The Western Court was probably cattle market, so the venue would have been appropriate. All right, I'm going to stop there, man. I'm going to stop there. What I showed you, that a lot of this stuff originated from some little sacred ritual stuff, man, that just been passed on. And you know, you study, you look at black people globally do a lot of ritual stuff, man. And all those, like the sport killing and the bull that you see in Spain, has its origins, you can say, going back to Egypt and stuff, and even older than Egypt. And I talked about the drying up of the Sahara Desert, and I talked about the image of the feathered people and and black people who have a reddish skin. All right, America is not the new world. America's an old world. Africa's an old world. Europe's an old world. America's only new world to white folks. All right, it's only new to white folks. So I wish we stopped using the word America's the new world. It's the old world, but all the other worlds are old. But it only became new to white folks. But like I just said, that the original so-called red man was nothing but a Negro. Because some of our people did have reddish hue, and that's just a sort of, that brown had a sort of reddish type of hue, and some of our people used to put that red ochre on their skin. So he had a reddish hue. And then when you look at the sun sometimes, like when it's sunset or sunrise, you see the sun have sort of like a little reddish glow. You see that little reddish glow in the morning, how the sun is rising. So a lot of times the ancients could see that little reddish glow to the sun, and then try to image themselves close to the sun. I don't know, but the sun would have like a reddish little hue to it as it's like rising up. Even sunset too, but particularly rising up, you notice the sun. Because I'll look at it. Over in Chicago, we had something which is called Stillman's Park. You can see a great image off Lake Michigan of the sun rising, and it has a little reddish hue as the sun coming up. It looks beautiful right there, man. And a lot of our ancestors might have taken into that and noticed that. You know, we are being distracted with all these factories and these clouds and these all this fog in the air and all other distractions. They didn't have all those distractions. They were able to see the sun rise. They were able to see the sun set. They paid attention to that constantly. So this is something I want to talk about, how, you know, you pick up images, you see people. This talked about African. This says African, but as you know, stuff happened in Africa. It happened in the Americas. It happened over in Asia, and it carried over to Europe. But particularly Africa and America, a lot of stuff, the similarity you'll see sometimes. Like I said, it's said up in there, the men with a feather in their head. They wore a feather in their head here in the Americas, man. With the feathers in their head over in Africa, you see some of them little chiefs over there have feathers. You had the black people with the feathers over here in America, man. I'm telling you right now, this stuff, these civilizations, I'm trying to speak fast, weren't isolated. There was a constant trade. It was constant moving back to different lands. In this case, different continents, and it was taking ideas from one aspect to another. You heard, I read about metalworking. I talked about metallurgy in my other book about iron smelting. You find iron in a lot of these mounds because they were smelting iron. Metallurgy, they were smelting iron. So you gotta pick up on a lot of this. This is why, like I said, all these Negroes just said that you were a descendant of African slave. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Because most black people are already here. I'm going to repeat this again. Most black people are already here. And he talked about the Etruscans and the Romans. The Etruscans were nothing but Egyptians. All right. That's all they were, man. And the Romans came upon them. Romans could not have been straight white people. There's no way they could have been white. At best, there were some white people mixed in, and they had some mulattoes there, but they absorbed They were nothing but Negroes, man. The more you start doing research, they were Negroes. And you start studying the rulers of the Roman Empire, both East and West, they were Negroes. So I want brothers and sisters to understand this, man. I'm going to go even further deeper than this. Because this is something that we need to know fully, and we got to really comprehend this stuff. We can't just study one black location, because black Americans are make up of various different black groups. Our ancestors are mostly here. They weren't brought over no slave ship, but the black people here are made up of various different black groups. I said it before, Aboriginal blacks and black Europeans, but also some black, quote, Asiatics, quote, Mongoloids, and then some Africans. But then you have black folks from the Pacific Islands who did sail here. They had the technology to do that. Not all of them were brought over as slaves. So you gotta understand this. I wish you understand this, brothers and sisters. As a kid, I was always curious, because I didn't buy what was being said, man, about that Kunta Kinte stuff we just brought over in slaves, man. I didn't buy into that. I knew that brothers and sisters sailed the seas. And we were a global people. Black people, so-called black people, Aboriginal people, and whatever the hell you want to call yourself, were the original people on all continents. So you need to know this. So when you hear people like Umar Johnson say that you just came over here as a slave from Africa, that's a person who have not done the research. They really have not done any research, to be honest with you. You have to do the research. And once you start doing the research, this is common sense. It really is. It's common sense. It's common sense. Like when you look at those Vikings wearing those little horn type helmets, it's common sense that come from some Negroes who took probably some cow horns in their head, might have killed cows, or took a live or real cow horns put in their head and to a hat. That's what they did. That stuff came from some ceremonial practices and their affiliation with the cow horn, or maybe affiliation with the moon. So they took the images of the sun and moon, they tried to apply that to their everyday life. Brothers and sisters, this information is in your face. Maybe because I study this constantly, man. I've been studying this since I was a kid, and to the point you can say it kind of made me a little crazy to some degree. So to study this as much as I've had to study this stuff, right? And this information is not going to be taught in your traditional educational settings, because your traditional educational settings, they're just there to program you, to teach you how to memorize a lie, and not teach you to actually go out and do the research and the studying and to acquire the information. They're not teaching you that. And that's why I get in some of these coons on YouTube, because all they're doing is regurgitating what white folks have given them. And most of the stuff is written by white folks, man, but they distort it so much. But even with their lies, once you start doing real research and start knowing certain terms and phrases, you pick up any lies. You say, that don't make no sense. Those people couldn't have been white. The original Greeks could not have been white. The original so-called Romans could not have been white. They could not have been white. White folks was filtering in. But then the large number of white folks, when they were being expelled out of Asia, that's when they started filtering more. And that was AD. All right. Those people who were running Europe then were still Negroes. When you see all those black people of Byzantium in Eastern Europe who were running it, those areas weren't white. They originally were black people. And then, like I said, in some pictures you'll see later on, you may see some black emperor or black ruler with a white